Welcome. My name is Rebecca Frazier. I am a Director of Admissions and Selection Development at the AAMC. First, congratulations. If you are watching this, chances are you've been invited to complete an interview. So what can you do to position yourself for success? How do you prepare for an interview that's not taking place in person, but rather virtually over the internet? What technology do you need? What's the interview platform? Where will you take the interview? And finally, and importantly, how will you prepare to answer the interview questions? We have designed this webinar to offer considerations and share tips as you prepare for your virtual interviews. We hope this will be a valuable resource to you. We've organized the webinar into three main sections: finding a suitable environment, preparing and practicing with technology and the interview platform, and preparing for and answering interview questions. But before we dive in, what is a virtual interview? There are two different types of virtual interviews. During a live interview, you'll use video and conferencing technology to interact with a live interviewer. Just like you would in an in-person interview, the interviewer will ask you questions and you'll respond to those questions. Alternatively, there are asynchronous or on-demand interviews. Unlike live interviews, during an on-demand interview, you will review text-based or pre-recorded questions and video record your responses. You will not interact with an interviewer. Rather, your video responses will be available to evaluators for review and scoring at another time. A key difference between in-person and virtual interviews is that in order to complete these virtual interviews, we must learn how to access and navigate a virtual platform, carefully consider the location we conduct the interviews, and think strategically about how we position our device and webcam. Let's start by talking about where you'll complete your virtual interview. Virtual interviews occur over the internet, so you'll need to consider where you can complete this interview. Consider what location will allow you to remain calm and focused throughout the interview to make sure you can put your best foot forward. In ideal circumstances, the location you choose should be a private, quiet, well-lit space where you can complete the interview alone. The space should be free of potential distractions and where you can speak freely. To the extent possible, find a space where you have control over the background noise. If you live with others, it may be helpful to let them know you'll be doing an interview. Also, consider the backdrop in your interview and try to keep it neat and free of distractions. Make sure there is an outlet nearby in case you need to plug in your device during the interview. When considering specifically where to complete the interview, keep in mind that the ideal location may not be a room in your home with a desk and a computer. It may not even be in your home. You'll want to consider a variety of options for your interview so that you find a space that will allow you to remain calm and focused. This will require careful consideration and a little creativity. For example, you might prefer to interview at home. However, if you share your home with other people, be it roommates, children, or even pets, who may be disruptive or cause you to be distracted during your interview, then you may need to exercise a little creativity and consider what may be an appropriate place. If you don't have a private room, you might consider other spaces which are a bit unconventional, but may be more conducive to interviewing. A closet or a car may be unconventional spaces you could consider. While these may seem strange, these won't and don't allow for the traditional desk, chair, computer setup. They may provide the quiet space you need to focus on the interview and avoid interruptions or distractions so that you can focus. If you choose one of these spaces, just be mindful of what the backdrop will be during your interview. Consider tidying the space or removing items that may be distracting. If your home is not well suited for the interview, you might consider asking a close friend or family member if they have a private space you could use. Alternatively, you could consider public places. If so, avoid open spaces and places where you could be interrupted, such as coffee shops and other communal spaces. Look into private spaces that are offered by public places, such as libraries, community centers, local colleges, or universities. You can also ask the interviewing institution or nearby medical school what spaces they may be able to make available to you. Again, the place you complete the interview may not be the traditional private room at home with a desk, computer, and webcam, and that's okay. The ideal location is one that is private, quiet, and free of distractions to the extent possible. Let's turn our attention now to practicing with technology and the interview platform. One of the biggest differences between an in-person and virtual interview is the need for technology and a virtual interview platform. The shift to virtual interviewing will require you to prepare your technology in addition to preparing for the interview questions. We encourage you to take advantage of any instructions or resources provided by the institution to make sure you can access and navigate the virtual platform. Most importantly, make sure you practice using the platform so that you can understand how to use it and give yourself time to encounter and troubleshoot issues before your interview day. Check your internet speed using a website such as speedtest.net. Can your internet speed support the interview platform and offer quality audio-visual? Keep in mind that Wi-Fi may not be as successful as a wired Ethernet connection. You should also test your microphone and web camera to ensure they are working well and the picture and sound are good quality. At times, using the computer for audio is not as clear as using a phone. Consider trying both to determine what works best for you. Finally, when setting up for your interview, position your camera so that your shoulders and full face are centered in the camera. We recognize that you may not have access to a web camera, computer, or stable internet at home. If that's the case, there are other options you can consider. First, if you don't have a computer or tablet with a web camera, you might consider using a smartphone if you have one. If you don't have any devices with a camera, consider asking a close friend or family member if you can borrow one of their devices for your interview. You can also check to see what technology is available at local libraries, community centers, colleges, or universities. Just remember, you'll want to be able to use the technology in a private space, not a more communal setting with distractions or interruptions. As I previously mentioned, you should also test your Wi-Fi to determine if your internet speed will support effective use of the interview platform. If not, you should consider an Ethernet connection or internet available in other places, such as those of a close friend or family member, local library, community center, college, or university. In addition to these resources, you could also ask the interviewing institution what resources, devices, or internet they may be able to make available to applicants. And last but not least, if you cannot find the requisite technology or internet to support virtual interviewing, ask your interviewing institution what other options are available to you. For example, will they permit a phone-only interview? Despite all of your diligent planning, there may still be unexpected issues or disruptions because we are relying on technology and internet, which do not perform perfectly all of the time. Consider what those disruptions might be and identify what you can do to proactively plan for them. For example, always provide your contact information to the interviewer in advance of the interview. This will allow them to contact you if there is a technical issue or you are disconnected. Keep the interviewing institution's process nearby so that you know what to do if you experience a technical issue. Who should you contact? How should you contact them? And in what time frame must you contact them? It may be wise to keep your computer or device plugged in during the interview or have an outlet nearby to avoid your battery dying mid-interview. To try and minimize interruptions or distractions, consider notifying others in your home or other interview location that you'll be doing an interview. Turn off your email or other notifications on your device so that may try to steal your attention away from your interview. If you expect that some uncontrolled interruptions may occur during your interview, such as small children stopping by, you could consider letting your interviewer know that at the start of the interview. This might help to reduce your stress and distraction, as well as provide an explanation for others who may create noise or suddenly appear in the background during your interview. Above all, if something goes wrong, keep calm and carry on. We are all facing challenging and unique circumstances right now, and your interviewing institutions are aware of that. In fact, your interviewers may experience similar challenges with regard to unexpected interruptions or technical issues as they conduct virtual interviews. Just as we are sharing these considerations and tips with you, we've also shared them with interviewers. We are encouraging everyone, interviewers and applicants, to be patient and empathetic with one another during these challenging times. If you experience an unexpected interruption, take a moment to regain your composure and focus, and then continue with your interview. If you confront a technical issue, remain calm. Institutions recognize that technical issues will come up from time to time. Technology is not perfect. If they provided you instructions on what to do, follow those instructions. And regardless, notify the interviewer or interview coordinator that you are experiencing a technical issue. This may be as simple as sending a chat message through a chat feature on the interview platform if your audio drops, or sending a quick email. Let's now turn our attention to preparing for the interview questions. The goal of any interview is to learn more about your experiences and qualifications, particularly as they relate to the knowledge, skills, or competencies that are needed to be successful. However, institutions may take different approaches to their interview process. Some interviews are less structured. During these interviews, one or more interviewers will ask a series of questions that are more general in nature and typically based on the applicant's application. So interviewers may ask each applicant different questions during the interview, and those questions are typically tailored to the applicant. Other interviews are more structured. These interviews include a standard set of questions that are designed to assess competencies or skills important and required for success, similar to a multiple mini-interview or MMI. The same or similar questions are asked of all applicants, and interviewers are limited in how many follow-up questions they can ask. Interviewers will take plenty of notes and then evaluate each applicant's response against a scoring rubric or rating scale. It's important to note that in these interviews, applicants may be asked to hold their questions until the interviewers have asked all of their questions. Structured interviews like this may feel a bit more formal and a little unfriendly, but please don't take it personally. Schools use this more structured approach to ensure a consistent and fair process for all of their applicants. There are three general categories of interview questions. More structured interviews will typically use behavioral questions and situational questions, or a combination of both. Behavioral questions are those that ask you to describe a time or situation in your past experiences that will allow you to demonstrate your level of knowledge and skills or extent of experience. Situational questions will ask you to describe what you should or would do in a hypothetical situation to demonstrate your knowledge and skills or extent of experience. Less structured interviews might include a behavioral or situational question, but more commonly they include general questions that ask you to describe yourself or your experiences more broadly. Regardless of the type of interview or the type of question, there are certain steps you can take to prepare yourself for the interview and position yourself for success. First, you should consider the competencies or skills that may be assessed during your interview. Your institution may have noted these in your invitation or other details. If not, you might refer to the institution's website for important competencies or skills. If the institution has provided a list of competencies or skills, reflect on your experiences as they relate to those competencies. Next, review your resume or CV. Reflect on your experiences and your learning. Try to identify some situations you think best exemplify your skills. You might also consider discussing your experiences with your pre-health advisor. Which are the best examples of your knowledge and skills? Your examples should demonstrate your highest level of performance on the competency. Consider creating a brief list of experiences that demonstrate your skills and could be used in response to different questions. It may be helpful to have these experiences readily available as you prepare your response to each interview question. When responding to behavioral or situational questions, we recommend using the STAR method to ensure a complete response with relevant details. The ST in STAR refers to the situation or task. Here you'll want to describe the task or issue or problem that you were facing, what led up to that situation, and who was involved. The A refers to actions. You'll next want to describe the actions that you took in response to that situation and why you took those actions. What did you consider when deciding on a course of action? And finally, talk about the R, or the results of your actions. What were the results or consequences? When selecting experiences, you may choose clinical or non-clinical experiences as appropriate. The goal is to describe an example of a time or situation when you demonstrated behaviors that reflect a high level of a competency. It's important that you provide a complete and comprehensive response with relevant details. To do this, avoid speaking in generalities. The interviewers are trying to understand through your response your level of understanding or performance on a competency. Typically, one strong example of your competency is better than several weak or tangential examples. In general, when responding to behavioral questions, share past experiences and be sure to discuss that situation, task, actions, and outcome. When responding to situational questions, discuss the actions you should or would take, why you should or would take those actions, and what you would expect the result of your actions to be. While more detail is generally better, there are some details that should be excluded. If your response may portray another person in a negative light, do not provide information that could be used separately or in combination to identify that person, such as a name, title, location, or other distinguishing characteristic. Also, do not provide patient information if you're describing a clinical experience. You don't want to provide any information that could be used separately or in combination to identify that patient, such as names, locations, diagnoses, or other distinguishing characteristics. Also, when referring to the patient, say the patient. During this webinar, we've discussed a lot of considerations and tips. Let's take a few minutes to summarize it all. As soon as you receive your interview invitation, gather as much information as possible about the virtual interview from the institution. You'll want to know if this interview will be live, interacting with an interviewer, or asynchronous, recorded responses. What is the video interview platform? What are the platform requirements, such as specific hardware, software, or web browsers, or internet speeds? How do you access and navigate the platform? And how can you practice in advance of the interview? Also, know what to expect during the interview. How many interviewers will there be? How long will the interview be? And what types of competencies or skills will the interview assess? And what types of questions should you expect? Then use the information you've gathered about the interview to prepare. Virtual interviews require you to identify a suitable space, prepare your technology, and prepare for the interview questions. Above all, try to be rested and focused. As with any formal interview, you want to be able to focus on understanding the questions, crafting coherent responses, and presenting your best self. Best of luck in your interview.